Hudson's like, can I join? I'm nervous.
I'm not the one getting interviewed.
I know, that's good. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm asking Evan questions about his Olympic campaign because it is the reason we are traveling full time, and I always get questions about how his campaign works and what kiteboarding is. And honestly, every time I get questions about it, I feel like my brain goes blank and I completely forget how to explain it. I was literally on a podcast like 2 weeks ago and they asked me to explain kiteboarding and I explained it not that great. I thought it'd be fun to have a YouTube video on my page that I could send people to answer the most common questions that we get. So we're gonna jump into it. I just want to do a little intro. If you don't know what Evan is doing, Evan is campaigning for the 2024 Olympics in Formula Kiteboarding, which is debuting at the 2024 Olympics in Paris.
I've never really been one to follow the standard path. Right now, that's chasing the Olympics. Whether that's in Europe or traveling on the road in an RV, being able to simplify that life is what truly matters to me.
I have questions that were asked on my Instagram page and I'm going to start asking Evan them. Also, when we first started dating, I literally knew nothing about the Olympics. I didn't understand how it worked. I probably asked you these questions so many times already. So I'm excited to sit down and just have a video with all of these answers. The first question we have is, can you explain what kiteboarding is?
Kiteboarding is a form of sailing or surfing where you're on a board and you have a sail like some distance away from you that's hooked to yourself with a harness, and you're controlling the sail with a bar, and then your feet are standing on top of the board.
I think what's interesting is there's different gear, and racing gear is very different than like if you were just going to go kite.
You can be on like a surfboard or like a wakeboard type, which you would see if you were like behind a boat. But you can also be on like foils that go faster and lift you above the water's surface.
What do you use?
For racing, we use ram air kites, which look a lot like paragliders. And then we have, for our board, we have like a high performance foil that's under the water, creating lift to lift us out of the water so we can go faster in better angles around the race course.
Also, your kite is different. Like there's inflatable kites and then there's...
Yeah, so we use ram air kites, which are like paragliders. Most people probably use inflatable kites where you pump them up and then you put them in the sky, where ours automatically fill up with air.
The next question is it a race or scored competition?
So for the Olympics, there's different types of professional kiteboarding, but for the Olympics, it's set up like a sailing regatta, which means there's races over multiple days, 5 to 7 days. And during those days, you might have, 3 to 6 races each day, depending on the weather. And then over the entire weekend, your scores get added up. And it's a low point series. So if you get first, you get 1 point. If you get 10th, you get 10 points. And at the end of the weekend, whoever has the least amount of points does the best. Within that, there's like more details that kind of gets more complicated, where you can discard a couple races if you have like an incident or something, and there's like qualifying formats. But the simplest way is just all your races get added up over the days of racing, and then however many points you have at the end is where you stack up lowest to highest.
I think that's the most confusing part. I feel like, especially when I was sending it to like my family and my friends when we were watching events, they were all so confused. But it's like you really want a first place, obviously, but that's 1 point, which I think is interesting because
Yeah,
that can
less
be
is
really
better.
confusing when you're watching or when you're like explaining and like you don't understand that part. I think that's super interesting. I said this at the beginning, but I was just thinking about it because we're in the RV. We actually decided to renovate an RV for your campaign, which I think is like a big part of why. Like I said, we're traveling full time at the beginning, but we pretty much decided to get an RV because we knew we were always going to be somewhere new. And right now we're at a kite boarding spot, and Evan will probably go out and kite after. Next question. What does training for kiteboarding involve? This is fun. I'm usually the one being asked questions.
What does it involve? What do you mean?
Like, what does training look like? What do you do? Let's pretend it's like, what does a day look like for you, I guess is a good way to probably explain it. Let's use...
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
So right now we're in the States, in California, Northern California, doing some training. Currently it's without any like team coaching or training partners. So that means it's kind of on me to build a schedule and make sure what I need to do is getting done. So like today or the last few days, it's commonly, wake up, eat a lot of food because I'm trying to put on weight and get stronger. And then either go kite or go to the gym and then come back and go kite again and then go kite again.
and kite.
It's
kite
mostly two kiteboarding sessions a day, one gym session a day, and all the other time is filled with like eating and kind of campaign management stuff.
What's like the most common word you would say is, I know it's not kite surfing really, but...
The Olympic name is Formula Kiteboarding because that's what our class is called and that's what it's added under for sailing. But I mean, you can call it kiteboarding pretty easily.
Kiteboarding.
Kiteboarding is very generic. That
Yeah.
covers kite surfing, kiteboarding freestyle, kite foiling. That covers the whole range. But Formula Kite is like the Olympic class.
How long have you been preparing for the Olympics? I think that's a really I'm interested to see how you answer this.
Well, for kiteboarding, it didn't get added to the Olympics until 2019-ish, for 2024. And I launched my campaign at the beginning of 2021, I believe.
Yeah, but you were like, when we first started dating, you knew that was, I guess that's a different question now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, I started campaigning at the beginning of 2021, like, officially, but unofficially, I've been on Formula Kite gear for 5-6 years now, and I've been kiteboarding since I was 17, so.
I think that's such an interesting one. At least I think that's actually, there's a few questions coming up about this, but I think that's so interesting because when I always thought of Olympics, I really don't know what I thought. Me and my mom had this conversation when we first started dating, was like, we had this like very different image of what Olympic campaigning meant because I just think it's not really well known. Like a lot of people I talk to are like, wait, that's how it works? And I think it's very different, but I remember like thinking, oh, you would start that when you're like 8 or like when you're super little, and I know you did in certain ways and there's questions coming up, but I think that's probably one of the most shocking things I think people hear when you say like I started it at 17, even though there's a lot that you did before that too to really get to where you were at 17.
Yeah, well, kiteboarding is added under sailing, so in that sense it's like very similar to sailing, and I started sailing when I was really little, when I was probably 8, for like a year or two, kind of just during the summer, and then I played water polo till I was 14, and then when I was 14 I got back into sailing like traditional sailboats through high school, and did that until I kind of went to college and started kiteboarding more full time.
Okay, going off of that, I'm going to skip this question. I'm going to go to this one. As a kid, was it something you wanted to do? I feel like you kind of answered that, but that kind of like ties into that, so I wanted to ask you that.
I think a common question to athletes or Olympians is like, when did you know you wanted to start? When did you have Olympic aspirations?
And everyone says since they
And
were...
it's very easy to say like, oh, since I was really little. And I always say this reply, but I think it kind of just happens in like what my pathway was. I definitely like thought of the Olympics during water polo stuff because a lot of Olympic water polo players come from Santa Barbara. and many of like the coaches there too were like announcers for the Olympics or had played in the Olympics. And then my mom also worked on the Olympics as like a producer for different sports.
Which I think
so
is
I
interesting.
knew a lot about the Olympics when I was younger, but I wouldn't say like I necessarily knew I wanted to do it from when I was really little. I probably found out that sailing was in the Olympics when I was like 15, and then from there I kind of wanted to figure out what my pathway would look like to the Olympics.
How long have you been kiting before you were eligible to compete for the Olympics? I feel like that's a common, I mean, I guess you said you do have to be eligible, but I think that's something where you can kind of tie in what you were just talking about.
Yeah, so when I was 15, I heard about the Olympics and knew that sailing was in the Olympics. The boats that were in the Olympics, some of them are the same for 2024, but a lot of them are quite different. Formula Kiteboarding wasn't yet a thing then, so you couldn't really start doing Formula Kiteboarding when you were 15, when I was 15, and then start training for the Olympics. But in order to be eligible for the Olympics, you just have to be a U.S. citizen and you have to win the athlete trials.
Okay, how did you get into kiteboarding?
So when I was in high school, I did sailing, and kiteboarding and sailing are pretty similar. I also did surfing just for fun. So if you put surfing and sailing together, you get kiteboarding. So once I was big enough, because you kind of want to be, you know, at least some size. I don't know, like 100 pounds or more.
So you don't blow away.
Just so that's a little bit
right?
easier for you, yeah. Then I started learning how to kiteboard with local people from Santa Barbara who already knew how to kiteboard, would lend me gear, and learned with a few friends.
What makes it a good day to kiteboard? I like that.
For like beginners,
Like me.
sunny, warm, a little bit of wind, probably in like the 15 to 18 mile an hour range. For Formula Kite gear, we race in anything from 6 knots to 30 knots. Knots is another form of speed that is slightly more than miles per hour because of nautical miles. Very complicated. But
You will only hear knots, though, in the kiting world.
1 knot is like 1.2 miles per hour. So 6 knots is our wind minimum, and the 30 knots are wind max. So pretty much most days we can go kiteboarding.
I recently have been trying to kiteboard, and honestly, you make it look so easy, and I did not grow up in a family that did like sailing or anything like that, and I think that makes a huge difference, because when he was first teaching me like about the wind and the wind window and all that, that was probably the most overwhelming part for me. I'm also in like very different gear than him. Like I'm on a wakeboard, twin tip, and an inflatable kite where he's on completely different stuff, and I feel like going into it, like, you guys all make it look so easy, especially like when I'm sitting here and I'm watching everyone, it looks so easy, but there's so many factors in it when you don't do that stuff that are so interesting. I think it's fun to try though, like, and I feel like it's a big range of like age groups that can do it, which is really cool. And if you haven't tried it, you should definitely try it. What I tried, not what he tried. His stuff is way harder than what I tried.
I think learning anything new is tricky.
Yeah, fair.
Having a sailing background helps with learning to kite, or having a surfing background.
Yeah.
If you have both, then it's
Super
more
nice.
helpful.
Yeah, because I had like
But
wakeboarding background, because like I grew up on the lake, and that helped me at least like once I understood the wind. I mean, I'm still trying to get the hang of it because I can't keep myself upwind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can at least like get up, and I know that feeling, because I feel like when you're getting pulled like on a wakeboard on behind a boat, it like pulls you forward, and that's kind of the feeling you get there. So that's not as weird. But then if you have like the sailing background, that would probably help a lot.
Yeah. I've been learning to wing this last week using some friends' gear, and
Do we have videos of this that I can put on this?
I'm sure we have video. And it's been a struggle, but I think learning anything new is hard at first, but once you get enough hours behind it, it becomes easier.
So I originally tried like 2 years ago. We're kind of getting off topic, but I think this is interesting. I originally tried like 2 years ago, and like I did it twice, and then I didn't do it at all. and then I tried again here. But something everyone said was like, don't let your boyfriend teach you how to kite. And I feel like I wouldn't want anybody else to teach you how to kite. Most people I think get like frustrated and freaked out. But I feel like you knew when I was about to get like freaked out, so you were able to like keep me calm. And it made it so much easier. And then I did do like one time in Mexico with like an instructor, and I was like, I did not like that because they just didn't know me as well. But I think it's really fun. I think it's something everybody should try. Everybody should try. What's your least favorite place to kiteboard?
I don't know if I have a least favorite to kiteboard, but the most discouraging is when there's a lot of trash in the water. It kind of bums me out when you see a bunch of trash ranging from like balloons to car tires and mirrors, and you'd be surprised by what I've seen.
Yeah,
but
it's crazy when you come in and you tell me all like the different things.
Yeah, projects like the ocean cleanup are pretty cool and something I encourage people to look at and support.
Yeah, I think you don't realize too when you're not in the ocean as much. I feel like so many people spend time like either on destinations going in the ocean, but like, you know, like on a trip in a tropical island and you go in the ocean, but I don't know if as many people spend time like just, unless you're surfing or you're doing an activity. Like I spend a little time, and I'm traveling with you and we're always at the beach, like I'm in the ocean, but I don't see what you see because you might see it on like land and stuff, but I feel like it hits differently when you're like out there and it's everywhere.
we can cover quite a lot of distance in a practice. So like most practices are around like 30 to 60 miles depending on what I'm working on, and in that you're covering a lot of ocean and you can see quite a lot of different things. One place that's probably like surprisingly dirty is Long Beach because of the LA River, and the LA watershed all kind of leads to the LA basin. So that's one that I hope the ocean cleanup targets before LA 2028.
It made me think of it. You said you cover a lot of distance. What's the top speed you've gone, and what do you guys usually go in an event?
So during racing, we're doing about, depending on what gear we're on and how windy it is. So in Formula Kiteboarding, there's 4 different kites you can choose from during an event. You have to register a large kite, which you use in light wind, a medium-sized kite, which you use in medium wind, a small kite you use in a lot of wind, and then a storm kite, which you use at like the very upper limit of our wind window. So on that different gear, we can go slightly different speeds, but upwind we're doing anywhere from 21 to 26, 27. Downwind, this is knots. Downwind, we're doing anywhere from like 30 to 39 knots.
Yeah, they go pretty fast. I think that's something that you don't realize always unless you're like watching it. And I feel like when most people ask you how fast you go, everyone's like shocked when they hear how fast you go.
Yeah, top speed I've ever gone
was here
just because it's kind of an ideal place for speed. With like the conditions you get, but it was 41.5 knots.
What is that in miles per hour, do you know? Or is that gonna be
converts to like 48 point something miles an hour.
I go about like, and then the sound feels too fast, then I sit down. Okay, next question. Let's see, what's your favorite at least? This is a good one. What do you think of Huddy?
Huddy's great.
Huddy he went to sleep. Huddy loves Evan so much. He's obsessed with you.
He is.
And he wants to sleep across your legs
He likes my side of the bed way more.
No, he is obsessed with him. Okay, that was just a good one. What's your least favorite part of the process? What's the process? What are we answering here? What's your, of the kiteboarding, or the Olympic? Let's say Olympic.
I'm guessing the question is regarding campaigning.
Okay.
For the Olympics.
Yeah, that's a better way to describe it.
Basically like running a small business in order to be able to do what I do each day, because you have to pay for it and buy the equipment and organize all the logistics.
It's not, I feel like you can explain that a little. It's definitely different. I don't know.
So most people probably think of the Olympics and think of Michael Phelps or Katie Ledecky or these very well-known athletes that have a lot of support and funding behind them because they've been so successful. And they have their team of doctors and coaches and equipment managers that travel with them, and that's like their bubble as they move around the world for competitions in the Olympics. But for the majority of athletes, that's not necessarily the case, at least in the US. A lot of us are privately funded through fundraisers and donations, and through that we then kind of pay for our training and our lead up to the Olympics and to the Olympic trials to then try and qualify to be a athlete to represent the U.S.
Yeah, it's very different than what I thought. I mean, I've said that like 5 times during this video, but it's seriously so different. I'm happy we sat down to do this because I feel like there's so many little things that people don't maybe know about it. But back to our question. Do you remember it? Was that answering it? What's your favorite and least favorite part of the process? I got us off track.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't say if I had a favorite or least favorite, but I think it's pretty cool doing a campaign because you learn quite a lot. It's like a small business. You learn how to do the finances and budgeting and planning ahead, and a lot of communication with donors and different people to try to be able to keep doing what you do every day. I don't know if I have a least favorite. I think I'm pretty lucky and fortunate to be able to be doing what I'm doing.
Okay, going off that one, this question says, when will he know if he got in to the Olympics is what it is implying.
Yeah, so there's 2 steps to qualify for the Olympics. The first step is to qualify the country, which not every country gets to go to the Olympics. So in Formula Kiteboarding, in men, there's probably 60 different countries, and only 20 countries will be represented at the Olympics. So first you have to qualify the country. One of those events is this summer in August in the Netherlands, in The Hague, which 8 countries will qualify at, excluding France, because they get an automatic bid for being the host. And then there will be 2 more events where you can try and qualify the country at to be a top 20 country. Then we have the U.S. athlete trials, which will be held in Miami, which is a 1-event qualifier for the athlete. So in January we'll have a 7-day event that is the Olympic trials, and whoever wins that event and is a U.S. citizen and is racing under the U.S. Will qualify as the athlete to go to Paris 2024.
Have you boarded in Southwest Florida?
Yes, so our athlete trials and a couple major events are in Florida during the wintertime. So this past winter we spent 5 months there in the RV to be able to have consistency in sleep and eating and routine, and then had training there for quite a few months. But yep, trials will be in Miami, so I spent a lot of time in Florida.
And we'll be back there soon. Next question. Have you tried for the Olympics before?
I've not done an Olympic campaign before. This is my first, but I've been involved in near other sailing Olympic campaigns. A lot of people I know have campaigned for the Olympics and gone to the Olympics, so it's a familiar thing in the sailing community. You start to know how to do it and what it all looks like, but no, this will be my first Olympic campaign.
First one. Did you explain how the race course works, or did we not get into that? Because it's interesting.
No, it's really complicated, but it's a lot like sailing, so if you know how sailboat racing works, then
pretend you don't.
You know how it
Pretend
works.
They don't.
But
we can draw something, can't we? Can we put something in the corner?
We could put a little graphic up from an event or something. But basically, everybody starts together at the same time, and there's a start line in the water. So there's 2 buoys that everybody goes through at the same time. And
start line. There's like a start line, but it's not drawn because you're on the ocean. I mean, that's obvious, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's 2 buoys in the water, and those buoys mark a start line, and everybody gets their watches in sync based on some flags and sound signals on the water by the race committee. And then as the time goes down, everybody sets up for their start, and then everybody starts at the same time. If you're over early, like you start before the time goes, you take a penalty. And then from there you race upwind to a buoy that you round, and then you race downwind to another buoy that you round, and then you go back up to the same buoy generally, and then you come back downwind to the same buoy, and then you kind of go off to the side to a finish line That's similar to the start line that you just pass through, and they take your score as you finish.
And you do multiple races a day throughout. I mean, you said at the beginning, but multiple races a day throughout, like a 5 to 7 day event?
Yep. So most races, depending on what format of the series you're in, if you're early on, they're 12 minutes long. If you're in like the semifinals or finals, then they get shorter to be more fast-paced and more viewer-friendly.
Last question that we're going to answer for right now. If you have any other questions, you can leave them in the comments below. But what is your support system like? I know it's a lot campaigning for the Olympics.
So in terms of campaigning, there's a lot of different ways to like financially be able to do it. There's different foundations throughout the country that you can apply to get grants. You can have private people donate to your campaign. And then you can have sponsors, but in terms of like support system, you have family, you have friends, Bailey traveling with me, which is huge. But yeah, I mean it's all kind of adds up to the campaign.
Somebody said, not a question, after following, I'm now rooting for Evan in his campaign.
Thanks.
It's so fun to see how many people through my page also have been into it. That is on my social media pages is definitely not as focused on sailing or stuff like that, but to see that people are so into the Olympics and supporting people that go for the Olympics. So thank you so much for watching this video. We had so much fun making it. I feel like it was fun to interview Evan in our long video. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Do you have anything else to say?
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Gotta leave, of course.